So this video is about what the probability of something happening is. For this, let's assume that we go down the road and measure the height of every adult we meet. Let's say that out of the first 30 people, so 30 people, the first 10 people have a height between 160 to 170 centimeters. Now, this means that one out of three people has a height of 160 to 170 centimeter. Now, the count of 10 people, we call it the frequency. And the symbol for that is F. The relative frequency is when we divide that by the total number of people we counted. So 1 out of 3 is what we call the relative frequency. And we symbolize that by F divided by N, where N is the total amount of people, which is 30 here. Now, this means here that 1 out of 3 people have this height range. But this may not be representative of the whole population. It may have been that the first 30 people were football club members attending a party, meaning that they were of similar height. So we keep walking down the road, measuring the height of more and more people. After we have collected the height of, let's say, 5 million people, so 5 million people, let's say we found that 2 million of them were within the range of 160 and 170 centimeters. We can now say that the relative frequency of the height 160 to 170 is 2 out of 5. So F divided by N, which is the relative frequency, is 2 out of 5, which equals 0.4. Now, because we have a very big sample, 5 million is a very big sample, we won't call this the relative frequency anymore. We will call it probability. So we can say that the probability equals 0.4. And a symbol we use for probability is P, capital P. So the probability of finding a person whose height is between 160 and 170 centimeter is 0.4. P equals 0.4. Or even better, P that someone, which we symbolize by X, is between 160 and 170 centimeters equals 0.4. In other words, as we walk down the road, we have 0.4 probability that the next adult person we meet is as tall as that. So, the probability of something happening is what its relative frequency is when the sample size tends to be larger and larger. In mathematics, we call this a limit. So the limit of the relative frequency as the sample size approaches infinity is the probability. Now, to write that down mathematically, Not that it matters a lot, but you may see it in statistics textbooks. So the limit of the relative frequency, which is the count divided by the sample, as the sample size tends to infinity, is the probability. This is an example of a probability. We all know that the probability of getting number 6 after throwing a die with 6 sides is 1 out of 6. So getting 6 after throwing the die is 1 out of 6, and that is the probability of x equals 6. Let's write that a little bit better. P of x equals 6 equals 1 out of 6. But we have all been in situations where we threw the die more than 6 times and we did not get any 6s. So why do we say the probability is 1 out of 6? Because if we throw it thousands of times, then the relative frequency will be approximately 1 out of 6. The more times we throw it, the more the relative frequency will tend to be close to 1 out of 6. If we could throw it infinite times, then the relative frequency would be precisely 1 out of 6. This precise number is the probability of 6 happening.